the world is witnessing a new kind of competition. Not with armies, but with semiconductors, the tiny chips powering everything from smartphones to supercomputers. The US and China are locked in a fierce struggle for dominance in this critical industry. The world could soon see two competing tech ecosystems, one led by the US, the other by China. The outcome of this chip war will shape the future of technology and global power. In response to US pressure, China has launched its most ambitious effort yet, the National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, or Big Fund 3. With over $50 billion in government backing, this fund aims to build a self-reliant semiconductor industry immune to foreign sanctions. Earlier versions of the Big Fund helped Chinese firms grow in less advanced chip sectors, but the world has changed. US sanctions have exposed critical weaknesses in China's capabilities, especially in advanced manufacturing and design. Big Fund 3 is a direct response, channeling investment into the most vulnerable parts of China's chip supply chain. The focus is on mastering the complex technologies needed for cutting-edge chips, especially equipment and software China can't buy abroad. This is a strategic move to turn points of weakness into domestic strength. The fund signals Beijing's determination to double down on technological independence. Managed by government and industry experts, it will identify promising local companies and provide the capital needed for risky innovation. The hope accelerate progress and help Chinese firms catch up to global rivals. The goal is a complete domestic ecosystem for advanced semiconductors. Big Fund 3 is China's boldest bet yet in the chip war. To understand China's pivot, we need to look at US actions. The US has imposed strict export controls targeting China's tech sector, not a blanket ban, but precise restrictions on high-end semiconductors. The goal blocked China from accessing the tools, software, and expertise needed for advanced chips, especially for AI and supercomputing. One key target is lithography equipment, complex machines made by ASML in the Netherlands. The US has pressured the Dutch government to block sales of these machines to China, creating a technological ceiling for Chinese manufacturers. Another target is electronic design automation, EDA, software, dominated by American firms like Synopsys and Cadence. Restrictions on EDA sales make it much harder for Chinese engineers to design cutting-edge chips. These controls have disrupted China's supply chains, delayed projects, and forced companies to rethink strategies. Firms once reliant on global suppliers now find themselves cut off from essential technology. The uncertainty created by US rules has made it clear to Beijing China can no longer depend on the global market for its most critical tech needs. This realization is driving China's push for self-reliance. The chip war is now a race to innovate under pressure. China is fundamentally changing its strategy in response to US restrictions. Earlier big funds spread investments widely, but Big Fund 3 is sharply focused on the technologies the US has placed off limits. The new priority develop homegrown lithography machines and domestic chip design software. Chinese leaders now realize that true self-reliance means mastering the entire semiconductor ecosystem, from raw materials to advanced manufacturing equipment. This is a far more difficult and expensive task, requiring breakthroughs in science and engineering. Developing a domestic alternative to ASML's lithography systems is a monumental challenge, but China sees no other choice. Companies like Shanghai Microelectronics Equipment, SME, are now at the center of this national effort, backed by Big Fund 3. Similarly, China is investing heavily in its own EDA software, nurturing local firms with state contracts and research grants. Without advanced design tools, Chinese engineers can't create the next generation of powerful chips. This strategic pivot signals China's preparation for a long-term technological struggle. The goal is not just to play the game, but to build a new one from scratch. China is betting big on its ability to innovate under pressure. The world is watching to see if it can succeed. The urgency behind China's pivot is real, a matter of survival in the high-tech world. US sanctions have cut off China's access to the most advanced technology, closing the window to import foreign expertise. This has created a sense of crisis in Beijing: accelerate domestic efforts now, or risk being left behind. China's dependence on foreign companies like ASML for lithography and American firms for EDA software is now seen as an unacceptable vulnerability. When the US restricts access, Chinese chip designers are forced to use outdated tools or develop their own, slowing innovation. The goal of Big Fund 3 is to break free from this dependency and jumpstart domestic capabilities. It's a race against time. China must develop its own lithography systems, design software, and sources of critical materials before the technology gap becomes unbridgeable. The massive investment is a bet that China can achieve in a decade what took others several decades. The stakes are high. If China fails to act fast, its technological ambitions could be permanently capped. The chip war is now a sprint, not a marathon. China's leaders know the clock is ticking. The world is watching to see if they can close the gap. The US-China tech conflict has real consequences for global giants. Huawei, once a global smartphone leader, was devastated by US sanctions that cut off advanced chips and Google's Android system. Forced to retreat from international markets, Huawei now develops its own chips and operating system, a costly reinvention. SMIC, China's top chip foundry, is blocked from acquiring advanced EUV machines, keeping it generations behind TSMC and Samsung. Yet, SMIC managed a breakthrough, producing a 7-nanometer chip for Huawei using older equipment, showing resilience but also the high cost of innovating under sanctions. American companies are affected too. NVIDIA, a leader in AI chips, is restricted from selling its best products to China. NVIDIA now designs less powerful chips for China, risking lost revenue and encouraging Chinese customers to develop alternatives. These stories show how government policies ripple through the global tech industry. For companies like Huawei, SMIC, and NVIDIA, the chip war is a daily reality, forcing reinvention, limiting growth, and reshaping strategies. The human and corporate faces of the chip war reveal just how high the stakes have become. To build a self-sufficient chip industry, China has adopted a wartime mentality, mobilizing the nation's resources for a single goal. The government is coordinating efforts, directing capital to key bottlenecks like lithography and EDA software. Big Fund 3 is a tool of state strategy, not just investment. Collaboration is encouraged between state-owned enterprises, private firms, and top universities to turn research into commercial products quickly. The government is nurturing local tech champions with subsidies, loans, and guaranteed contracts. Companies like SMIC, SME, and emerging EDA firms are expected to deliver breakthroughs. This top-down approach is a hallmark of China's system, but it carries risks. Centralized planning can lead to inefficiency and waste. There have been reports of corruption and mismanagement in earlier chip initiatives. The challenge is to harness state power without stifling innovation and competition. Success depends on striking the right balance between direction and creativity. Despite massive investment, China faces daunting obstacles on the road to chip self-sufficiency. The technology gap is huge. Global leaders like TSMC and ASML have decades of experience and trillions in investment. Catching up isn't just about money. It requires mastering complex science and engineering. Even $50 billion from the Big Fund is small compared to what industry leaders spend annually. China must invest wisely and efficiently to make a real impact. Another challenge is talent. Building advanced chips needs a vast network of skilled engineers and a mature supply chain. Developing this ecosystem takes years, not months. There's also the risk of isolation. Turning inward could cut China off from the global collaboration that drives innovation. The path is difficult and success is far from guaranteed. China's chip ambitions will require patience, persistence, and breakthroughs yet to come. The US-China chip war is pushing the world toward a major turning point. One possible outcome is decoupling, the global tech ecosystem splitting into two competing spheres. The US and its allies would use one set of technologies, China would build its own. This split could mean smartphones and apps that don't work across borders, and a splinter net with incompatible standards. Globalization would reverse, raising costs and reducing efficiency for companies and consumers. Businesses would face uncertainty, forced to choose sides and navigate conflicting regulations. Supply chains would be disrupted and reconfigured at great expense. The rivalry could extend to AI, quantum computing, and biotech, fueling a new technological Cold War. A divided tech world could slow innovation and increase geopolitical tensions. The central question, can the US and China compete without fracturing the global system that has driven progress? As China pours billions into chips and the US tightens controls, the world watches and waits. The race for the future of technology is on, and its outcome will shape the world for decades.